Hi guys, welcome to IbomStudio. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to model an eyeglass in Blender. And this is going to be a very beginners friendly tutorial. So if you know nothing about Blender, you are free to watch this tutorial. Just make sure you watch it from the beginning to the end, because all the tips and tricks involved in making this product is going to be spelled out accurately in this tutorial, which you can still use the same tips and tricks to model or other stuffs you may want to model in Blender. Alright guys, let's get going. And what we want to do now is to go straight to the point. I don't delete my default cube. What we are going to do now first is to model the frame. So here we are going to press, or let me turn on my screencast key so you see whatsoever I'm pressing at the bottom right here. So let's push it out. Alright, click on Ctrl 2 to apply a subdivision to the cube, and then go to your modifiers property and apply that. Then go to the edit mode, select this frame by clicking alt left click and click on Ctrl I to delete this. Clicking 3 to go to the right orthographic view. Let me select it so you can see this is what we are now left with. So using the proportional editing and some manipulations here, we are going to have the frame of our eyeglass, something we are going to start modeling with. So we click on this and click on O to apply the proportional editing, and click on G. You can use your scroll mouse button to scroll this in or to scroll this out. This influences the vertices in the viewports. So let's move this down here. Let's work with this. Move this up with G. Okay, let's move this up to this point. Let's move this up. Alright, let's say we are okay with this. A little more. Alright, so this is what we have. So with this we are going to be able to start modeling everything from the frame of the glass. So click on A and click on E to extrude. If you move your mouse, your vertices are going to be extruded. Right click to undo the selection, click on S to scale. Alright, this is going to depend on how big your frame is. Like if you're modeling using a reference image, you have to make this match with your reference image. So I'm going to go with this basically at first. So now click on A and extrude along X axis, okay, to give it a little thickness. So this is what we have now. So following our reference, we still need to work on this. What we should do next is to make sure we have something like this here, something like this. Alright, so let's work on it. What we are going to do is we select these faces, 1, 2, 3, the top faces, and go back to your right orthographic view, move it up and scale it along the Z axis by 0 and move it down a bit. So now select this particular face and extrude it along Y direction and scale it along the Y direction to 0. Click on 2 to go to the edge mode and then move this up so you can achieve something like this. You can still move this down. You want to move this down a bit, okay. Alright, then select faces, go to your right orthographic view, extrude this along Y and scale it along Y to 0. Alright, so this is what we are having now. It's not looking like what it should look like at the moment. So what we need to do here is to select all and go to your modifiers tab and apply the subsurface modifier and increase this to 2. Okay, so now we can see what it's looking like. We can see all the jagged faces. So what we need to do here, but before we do that, come here and check your face orientation. You can see that some parts are red and some parts are blue. So these are the face orientation. To correct these faces, you want to make all these faces blue. So to correct it, go to edit mode, click A to select all and click on shift and N to correct the faces. And when you come back here and uncheck the face orientation, you're going to see that all other parts are being aligned as it should be. So you can right click here and shade smooth. Okay, so here it's going to make it very easy for us to continue working. So what we are going to do here now is to tighten up some parts by going to H select mode and add an H loop by clicking Ctrl R, then accepting the H loop and moving it to the edge to make it tight a bit. Move it to this edge too. Okay, So now we have the inner part tightened up. Okay, let's go to the upper part. Ctrl R, tighten it up a bit and do same for here. Okay, this is what we have. So now what we are going to do is we are going to mirror this eyeglass to have the other half, if that makes sense. So what you're going to do, go to edit mode, select all and move this along y-axis. Okay, move this along y-axis and go to your modifiers tab and then add another modifier called the mirror modifier. So automatically it's mirror to the x-axis at default. So that's why you're having this one in front of the next. So we don't want that, we want it to be mirrored along the y-axis. Okay, and what we want to do is to enable clipping so they won't go through each other, the faces won't interact with each other. All right, so now this is what we have. So we are almost getting there. So what we need to do here is to click on 3 and select these faces, holding down shift and delete it, X and delete faces. So now you can have this. Select all and move with G and Y. Okay, and this is the function of the clipping. They don't go through each other like crossing each other's path. They just feel like being submerged at some point. So we need to just make it slightly into each other. All right, so when you go out of edit mode to object mode, we are already with our frame. We are going to work on this part here to make it go down a little. So what we need to do is to zoom in closer using a middle mouse wheel and clicking 2 on our number pad to have this switch from face select mode to H select mode. Click on this and move it down. Okay, but at some point we're not going to be able to have that bendy face, so we need to add another H loop here. Okay, we need to add another one here and then go to X-ray mode and select this face and click double G to move it along the edge. Okay, you can now use this to select this to go up a bit. You can move this down. You can add another H loop here to be able to adjust it slightly the way you want it to be. Let's move this on the G axis. Let's move this down a tad and this too. Let's move it down a tad. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Okay, so let's select this and move this a little. All right, and then let's make this have a little steep. So now if we go out, we have something like this. Okay, the top of the frame is always thicker than the bottom part of the frame. So what we are going to do is 3 is the right orthographic view. Click on Ctrl and 3 to turn to the left orthographic view. Then go to face select mode and click on C for your circle select option. Then select the top parts. All right, and then just extrude it in X direction. All right, just a little. We have this. So now you can now see that the top part is now thicker than the bottom part. Next thing to do is to bring out the part that's going to lap your nose. Okay, so what we need to do is to add an H loop here, then move it a little bit together with the other parts, and then click on this and click on one H, which is this one, and click on G and X to bring it out. From this, you're already seeing where I'm heading to. Okay, so when you have this, click on G, Y to move it a little bit to the side, the part that's going to rest on your nose. All right, so now we have this. Okay, all we need to do next is to extrude this part that is going to continue to the handle. Go to face select mode and click on this part. You can still work on this to have a very nice extrusion there. So let's go to vertex select mode and put this upwards. Yeah, let's put this upward and then bring this up a little bit and bring this to the front a little bit and move this to the Y. Okay, and then move this way. Okay, let it be this way. Come back here and click on this face and extrude along the X axis. Scale along X to be 0 to make sure you have a flat face there. We have our full frame. So what we need to do next is to work on the handle. So what we need to do now is click on Shift and D to duplicate this face, right click on your mouse to return that duplicated face to where it was duplicated from, and then click on P. You want to click selection. After doing this, go to your object mode, then click on the face you just separated and go back to edit mode. You can now work on this face separately. Click on Ctrl 3 to go to the left Autographic View where you can see it. Click on A to see your duplicated mesh. Alright, so now what you need to do here is to extrude it along that particular axis. Let it be somewhere here. Go to the front view to see what you're doing and extrude it one more time. Click on G and Z to bring it down. Okay, this is just a rough block modeling of your eyeglass handle, and what you need to do here now, what you need to take note of is that you need to make your eyeglass handle the same length as your eyeglass frame. So before we go into that, let's make sure that our origin is set to this point where the eyeglass handle will be pivoted around. By so doing, if you rotate it around Z axis, it's going to be in line with your eyeglass frame, so you know if they're of the same length or not. So go into object mode, edit mode, sorry, and click on the face. Click on Shift S to click on cursor to selection to bring the cursor to this particular place, and then go back to your object mode and right click on that object. Go to set origin and click on origin to 3D cursor. So as it is now, the other mirror part has returned to where the 3D cursor is. So we still want this mirrored. So what you need to do is go back to your mirror modifier. You want to go to your mirror object and click on this pen tool and direct it to your eyeglass frame and click on it so it returns back. So at this point, if you rotate this handle around the Z axis, you are going to see this. And before that, make sure you check out clipping so they won't interact with each other. So now be in the right orthographic view and rotate along Z axis to see if they are the same length. They are not the same length. So what you need to do is select it and scale it along Y axis. Scale it and move it along the Y axis. Okay, you should be fine with this. Let's rotate it along the Z axis. Alright, we now have the rotation as it should be. So what we need to do next is to work on the eyeglass handle. So click on the eyeglass handle and go to edit mode. Then add in a loop cut to tighten up this. So what we need to do now here is select this first and scale it along the X axis to 0 to keep that straight before beveling it with Ctrl B. Okay, so let's add in enough H, let's say just 2, but it's too thick. We are going to work on that very soon. Let's add another stub here and H ring. So now let's start working on this. Let's move this along X axis, okay, and move this. Let's select the bottom of this one, move it down, okay, and then move this to the X, move this down, move this up. Alright, we need one part to be more extruded, not extruded actually. Let's say this one, let's move this down, okay, something like this, and move to the X axis. Alright, yeah, let's also move this down here, move this down to the Z. Okay, alright, we have this, let's move this up a little. Just making some fine tune. At this point you need to save your work. Let's say eyeglass. So let's say this is okay. Let's just pretend this is okay. You can choose to scale this along, not all of it, just some parts. Okay, make sure you turn on the X-ray so it selects all the parts for you. Let's just make this a little bit thin at the bottom part. Okay, alright, so this is what we have. What should be done here is adding an H loop to tighten up the sides. Okay, alright, so we have this, we can have this, so it's looking nice. Alright, so we can increase subdivision surface to 3, so we have a better smoothing there. So at this point we can also add we will also add a ring, an H ring to this point to tighten that up. Alright, so now we have a frame and we have a frame handle. Alright, The next thing to do now is to add the glass, but let's just bump up our subdivision surface here. What we need to do is to just select H ring here, the one that goes through the frame. Click on Shift D to duplicate and move it along the x-axis to bring it out. Okay, then click on P to separate and click on Selection to separate it. Then go to Object Mode, click on the separated one and then go back to Edit Mode. Click on A to select all of it. What you need to do here now is to click on F to fill the face. If you go back to Object Mode now, you are going to see this face. Alright, glasses are not always paper thin like this, so all we need to do to it is to add a solidify modifier to give it some thickness. Okay, no matter how small, but I'm just going to go with 0.02. Alright, this is okay for me. But before I accept that, I need to check the face orientation. Alright, so they're all blue. So let's move it back to the center. Okay, we have to make sure that to see most of the parts clearly, come right here, this arrow, and activate the shadow and also the cavity, so you can see most of the parts well. All right, so now this is what we have. We now have our eyeglass. Okay, and it seems this part is not properly aligned. Let's work on it a little. What we need to do next is there's something that works like a pivot here that makes this frame to turn. That is what we are going to add. Before that, we are just going to move this a little bit along x-axis, and we need to model the pivot separately. It's not hard, but it's just a little bit tricky to follow through. So it's just simple. Let's just add in a cube. Okay, and click on the / to go to the local view of the cube. Then this is what you're going to do. Go to Edit Mode and in X-ray mode, click on this, move this down, yeah, and then add an edge loop. Then select this face and extrude it along the y-axis. CB in front mode. Okay, let's scale it down to the this is going to hold something that looks like this. Okay, so it can freely rotate. These faces are going to be attached to the handle of the eyeglass. Okay, so as it is rotating, it's going to follow this particular face. I don't know if that makes sense, but let's just keep on going with the modeling. This is not actually an animation tutorial, but I just wanted to get the point. All right, so what we need to do next is to model what this is going to rotate from. All right, so at this point, let's select this face and Shift S, cursor to selected, and let's add a circle here. All right, so you can see where we are heading to, GX. Okay, and move this up in Y direction. Scale this down, move this, and scale this circle up again. So let's select the faces, the rings of this circle. Okay, and delete those parts. Then select this part, click on L, then extrude it and then scale it. Alright, select just this part and extrude it down. Okay, this is just all we need, and then add this to it. Okay, just add this to it, this edge loop, to tighten up the edges. Okay, and then select this with L and bring this along the Y and the X axis. Okay, let's just have it there. Alright, so we have this now. We can add in an edge loop here, add in another one here. Okay, then save this and then go back to objects, select mode, then rotate this in Z axis by -90 degrees. Alright, let's go back to the object mode to add the other parts that is going to help in the rotation of this. Okay, so what this other part looks like, it's going to look like a medium-sized dumbbell, something like that has a cylinder here that this thing is going to rotate around. Okay, so let's move our cursor here and add a cylinder, scale it down, move this a little here. Although this part is not going to be really visible actually, but just doing it for explanation's sake. Okay, let's move this up a little. Okay, alright, so let's have this here add in a loop cut, move this up to this point, and make another loop cut, move it up to this point. Alright, so what we need to do now is, in this, select the top and bottom faces, scale this in Z axis, scale this in Z axis, and then still in that face select mode, click on Alt and left click to select that whole side, and do the same thing here. So from here you can click on extrude and then right click again and then scale it. While scaling it, click on Shift Z to avoid scaling around the Z axis. Just use your eye to, figure out some things right over here. Alright, while doing this, you can come back to this particular one and scale it along the X axis. Yeah, right. Then move it back to move it back here. And then move this along the X axis. Okay, something like this looks nice. This looks nice. So now you can click on this, go to this particular mode. Yeah. Okay. Move this along the Y axis. Alright. So we have something like this. You can choose to go to Edge select mode and select this and move this to along the Y axis to make it feel so tight around the little cylinder. Alright, so we have this, and this is poking through. It shouldn't. Let's select this and move it along the Y axis. Okay. Yeah, so we have something like this. You can even add an edge loop here too, and then select this part, okay, and move it to the X axis, move it a little bit to the Y too. Alright, so now you have this, okay, something like this. This is looking very nice. You can still make it uniform. Actually, move this to the Y. So modeling is just all about like fine-tuning, following up your reference. Like there is no straight way to like get a thing in 3D. So this is our scale. Make sure you apply this scale. Okay, then shade this smooth. You can apply the bevel modifier here, increase it to 2 or let's say 3, and tighten up these edges by reducing this. Okay, alright, so we have that. So now we have this. Okay, so you can select the both of them and scale them down, then go back to this particular part. We have the eyeglass, so we need to go in to it, scale it down, move it along the X axis. Okay, then scale it down. This part is not going to be really visible, except you are a perfectionist and really want to fix or see everything concerning this. You can scale it along the Z axis. Okay, move this up and scale it on the X axis. Alright, you can still scale it on the X axis too. That's what I was calling ever since. So we go into edit mode and move this along the X axis too. Okay, so and let's tighten this up a little. So right here. Okay, then let's select this and move it along the X axis. Right, do we have something? Okay, let's move it along the Y to make it big. In between, you can scale it along the Y axis too actually. So this is what we have here. Alright, so if this should rotate around the Z axis, it's not in the correct position to rotate now. Like the origin is not supposed to be there. The origin is supposed to be at the center of this. So let's keep this, let's set the origin of this to the geometry, which is at the very center of this, and then bring the cursor to selected here so that the 3D cursor will be here, and then set the origin of this particular one to the 3D cursor. So now if we rotate it along the Z axis, you see what happens. So the handle will be following it at this part. Okay, at this point we need to parent the handle to this part. Okay, but before we do that, we need to apply the mirror modifier. You apply the modifiers in order. So you click on this and click on Ctrl A to apply the modifier. All right, so now if I rotate this in Z direction, if you rotate this in Z direction, it's going to follow up the origin, which is at this other part, because that's where we set it to be before adding the mirror modifier, and they are still the same objects. All we need to do is to select this and go into edit mode, separate by loose parts, so each of them becomes its own object. After doing this, I can now set the origin of this to go to the 3D cursor, which is here. All right, so I can now rotate. If I rotate this one around Z axis, this is what it's going to do. So now, after doing that, I need to parent it to this, Ctrl P, keep transform. So if I rotate this, it's going to follow it. All right, and I can also parent these other parts to this to this, Ctrl P, keep transform. So now I'll also parent these other parts to this, okay, and Ctrl P, keep transform. So if I move this, these other parts move along, everything together. So that's the hierarchy. And if I rotate this in Z, this follows. Okay, if I rotate this in Z, this follows. All right, so now this particular one is sharing the same origin as this one. Both of them are parented to this, which is not supposed to be so. So this one too needs to have something like this here, exactly. So what is needed to do now is to come here and click on Alt P to undo the parents, clear parents, and keep transform. All right, so now we have to select this and add a mirror modifier to it, and then set this as the object to be mirrored and to be mirrored around Y axis. Do the same thing here, add a mirror modifier and set the mirror object to the frame and change the axis from X to Y. Okay, and move this to the top. What do you have to do next? You have to apply it. All right, so by applying this, they become same objects but still not, you see. So what you need to do now is to go, after select this, go into edit mode and separate them by loose parts. Okay, and do the same for this other guy over here, mirror over there. So apply the mirror modifier, then select both of them, separate by loose part. Okay, so by so doing, we need to parent all of them again for the side. Okay, so parent this to this, Ctrl P, keep transform, parent this to this, Ctrl P, keep transform, and parent this to this, Ctrl P, keep transform. So what you need to do now is come to these other parts, the pivot of this, right click and set origin to geometry. Okay, after setting the origin to geometry, you set the cursor to selected, so the 3D cursor comes here, and then set this origin to this particular 3D cursor. All right, so now if you come here, rotate this around Z, you have this. Okay, and if you come here to rotate this around Z, you also have this, and none of them are going through each other. So you see where we've headed now. All right, so this is just it for now. Let's undo the rotation. So now we have all this together, and if you select this, we can move our frame except this part that's parented. So click on it and click here and parent it to the frame. All right, so now we have our eyeglass here. You get it? All right, so the next part is to texture this, but before that, let's add a plane to show how this is being seated. Go down to, okay, move this here and scale it. All right, so let's rotate this along Y axis. We can still fine-tune this before going deeply into the shading. Can fine-tune this, move this along Y. Okay, you are free, like have that creative freedom to work more on this. Just little fine-tuning. Okay, nothing much. So let's not waste our time. Okay, all right, so we now have this. All right, let's go to this render preview so we can see what you're doing. Change this to CPU or GPU depending on your laptop, and reduce this to this. Okay, so here now everything is going to be white, just like mine is. Okay, if you switch over to this viewport shading mode. All right, so come over here and change this here to shader editor. All right, so click on this body. You can make this deep blue. You selected, obviously you selected everything. You can make this deep blue All right, let's call this frame. Let's call this the frame. You can automatically rename it here. Let's call this the frame for this, and then let's call this, let's add another material which is going to be different. Let's call it glass. All right, so to have the glass feel, you change the roughness down to 0. Let's say 0.01, and then the transmission turn up to 1. Okay, we're going to have something like this in EV. All right, but Cycles handles this very better. Okay, so, and these two should be the same. Let's make this part let's make this part golden, and let's call it pivots. Okay, so let's bring the color down to something like this and increase the metallic up and the roughness down. Let's make the roughness 0.35. okay, and let's do the same thing for here. Select the pivots, and same thing for this one. Select the pivots. Okay, we have this. So let's make this ones, let's copy the materials from the pivots of this side to this side. So select here, click on this, select all of this by clicking and holding shift, and then hold shift and click on this, and click on Ctrl L to link this. Okay, and so we have this now. Let's add color to the floor. Let's give it a text and shading name of floor, sorry, ground. Let's reduce the roughness and make this black, or let's make this another color. Let's say pink, but a deeper pink to make it look like purple. Alright, let's save our work. Okay, now we can now go to this particular mode to see our eyeglass. Alright, so this is how it is currently. This is how it is. The ground is too reflective. Let's bump this up and make it look realistic. Let's take it to black. Let's take it to black. Okay, or later we can still move it to white. So let's have a nice background for this. Let's go to H, select, move this up and extrude this in Z direction. Okay, now select those edges and Ctrl B to bevel, and scroll up your mouse, right click to shade smooth. Okay, so now we have this. Alright, so you can set your camera here by clicking Ctrl Alt 0 and clicking on N to you would love to apply the scale of your background, but that's not really necessary, but I just did. So to position your camera very well, click on N and then go to view, and then go to camera to view, sorry, and then try to align your camera to the base parts of right about here. Is nice for me. It's nice for me here. I don't really want to see the environment through the glasses. Alright, here is nice, and then come back here to untick so you can move freely. So at this point, this is what you have, and you can hit render to render your image. Alright guys, thank you for watching this tutorial. Do well to stick around next time for the next tutorial. You can comment on anything you want me to show you how to model. Alright, have a nice time. Please kindly subscribe to this channel.